Thank you, and please be seated. This is Aloha Sunday, and on every Aloha Sunday, we always speak to Hawaiian tradition and the way that those beautiful spiritual traditions intersect with what we know as spiritual truths. Usually, I've been taking wonderful sayings from Dr. Mary Kavinapuku'i's book, Olelo no Eau. I'm going to diverge from that for the first time in 7.5 years, and we're going to talk about something else. We're going to talk about ho'oponopono. It's a Hawaiian healing process. Ho'o is a word meaning to do or to cause or to make happen. Pono is a word meaning good or right. And in Hawaiian, when you really want to make it really good or right, you just say the word twice, like pono pono. For example, kanakawai is a rich man. Kanakawai is a very rich man. So ho'oponopono is about making things right, making it really right. Ho'oponopono is actually a very ancient Hawaiian practice. It predates the influx of Christianity by hundreds and hundreds of years. There has been, however, lately, in the last several decades, people who came to Hawaii and experienced ho'oponopono, and then they created a process that they called ho'oponopono, and they have been teaching it around the world. Dr. E. Halia Ku'ohulin is one. Joe Vitale is another. There are many, and they're really good processes. And they have within them some powerful life-changing affirmations. Some of you may have done that. In my church in Omaha, we had Dr. Hulin come and do the ho'oponopono process. It is not, however, the actual, real, authentic, ancient Hawaiian process. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I just want to be sure you're clear on that. There are all kinds of ho'oponopono, but we're talking about the one that is more indigenous to the people here. It is probably a unique Hawaiian experience, although it's quite common throughout the Polynesian islands, and many indigenous peoples have something like this. The Native Americans have a very similar process. They don't call it ho'oponopono, of course. It's called drumming circles or peace circles or healing circles or even some elements in sweat lodges. Ho'oponopono is essentially a process how everyone involved in a small community is brought together for reconciliation and healing. The Hawaiians were very clear about the oneness of all life and all people. And that oneness could be fractured by us doing some things that were harmful or hurtful. And when that happened, there needed to be a very formal, clear, honest, and integrous way for reconciliation. And that process is called ho'oponopono. Now, we have something kind of similar in our modern psychology. It's called, and some of you may know this, an intervention. In fact, I think there was a reality show once called The Intervention. If you don't know what an intervention is, it's usually done with people who are drug addicts and alcoholics. And of course, they're creating all kinds of fracturedness. So what would happen is a psychotherapist would get all the family together, and they would sit around the living room, and they'd have everybody, the boss, the family, girlfriends, boyfriends, everybody together. And then the poor, unsuspecting addict would come in the front door and go, "What's going on here? Here's everybody." It's a little bit like an ambush. The end result of an intervention usually is that person would be whisked off to rehab somewhere. Ho'oponopono is very different. It is a process in which everybody is invested in it. It is not an ambush. And there is no place to go after ho'oponopono because that is where the healing happens. That sounds great, isn't it? You want to learn about that and how that happens? That's great. However, here's the thing. I don't expect all of you to go out and start doing ho'oponopono. I mean, it's complicated. And you can't do it for every little situation. Like, that just because you go up to the post office and they don't have Christmas stamps yet, and you get all upset. So you don't want to invite the postmaster to your house and then the clerk and all the people in Safeway and have a ho'oponopono because you're irritated. You don't want to do it because you go shopping at Safeway and that person in the 10-item express lane has 12 items. So you say, "Excuse me, would you come to my house after this? Because we're going to have a meeting and I'm going to invite all the Safeway people to come and I'm just going to express my honest feelings and You can't do that. Take heart. At the end of our discussion today, I want to refine this down to a process that you can take for yourself and use. A kind of a personal ho'oponopono. I don't know about you, but do you have different people in your head that are arguing all the time, or is that just me? Do this. No, don't do that. You have this kind of thing. Some people call them the committee. I call them terrorists because they're usually back there ready to sabotage my life one way or another. You can have ho'oponopono with those people. It's great. So we're going to go through the process of ho'oponopono, and I want you to be really clear that we're talking about the kind of the generic original Hawaiian process. There were 6 important steps in that process, actually probably more, but I've kind of culled it down to 6. The first one is called ho'omalu. Malu is a Hawaiian word meaning shade. It also means calm or peace. So ho'omalu is a quiet time to think about the problem. In other words, think before you speak. So before there would be ho'oponopono, there would be a time with ho'omalu when you are supposed to think about it. What a concept. Think before we act. What an idea. To spend time alone. Now, I know this is powerful. I know it personally, it's powerful in my life. Because when we're in meditation, things can happen. Charles Fillmore is the co-founder of Unity, and he wrote, by meditation, man lights up the inner mind, and he receives more than he can put into words. So don't you want to enter into a reconciliatory practice with an enlightened mind? Wouldn't that be perfect? You want to go into this idea centered and poised. The other thing about ho'oponopono to remember in the Hawaiian tradition is that it always acknowledges the presence of God everywhere and in everything. So in this first step, we're acknowledging that presence in ourselves by being quiet and calm. Interestingly enough, even in the Mormon faith, in the Book of Mormon called the Doctrine and Covenants, there's a scripture where Jesus is saying, yea, behold, I will tell you in your mind and in your heart by the Holy Ghost, which shall come upon you and which shall dwell in your heart. I like that. They're affirming that divine holy presence is in us and going to tell us. And we're not going to know it unless we spend time in the quiet. Of course, the greatest advocate of meditation was Buddha, who said meditation brings wisdom. Lack of meditation leaves ignorance. Know well what leads you forward and what holds you back, and choose the path that leads to wisdom. Now, the important word there, who thinks they know what the important word is? What is it? Choose. Is that what you were going to say? Who knows? But he's embarrassed now. But it's choose. Choose is the important word. This is where our power is. We have that choice. Now, it's really fascinating. I know this for real. I've told this story before, but when I was going to seminary, the first week I got there, I was really irritated. Can you imagine? They weren't teaching unity the right and proper way, because I had learned from David McClure. And your first unity minister always teaches you the purest unity truth there ever is. And I had learned it, and they weren't doing it. Now, God had called me to ministry, but I was upset. And I got righteously indignant, which is a wonderful way to be mean, nasty, ugly, hateful, critical, and still Christian. And that's exactly what I was. I was all of those things, and I was mad, and I was going to quit because they were awful. And I told everyone that I was going to go quit. I've told this story before. Well, finally, when I stopped and I decided to meditate, because, when you're right, you don't have to pray. Yeah? When you're right, you don't even need to meditate because you already know what's right. So I knew what was right, didn't need to pray, but when I finally did, there was this clear voice. As irritating and obnoxious as it could possibly be, with a slightly Jewish accent. It did. And it said, look, I never said you were going to like it. I just said go. You mean I don't have to like it? Just go. That insight could never have come from my befuddled righteous brain. It came in meditation. You see, when we spend time in meditation before we take action, which is a really lovely way to live, instead of taking action and then praying like heck that you can get out of the mess you created, it's much better to pray first, not create the mess. So I know this is really important. You have to trust me, and I talk about meditation every week. So that's ho'omalu, the quiet time. Number 2 is kukulukumohana, which means state the problem. And even in this phase, it's an acknowledgement that God is always there, even in that situation. In this process, the Ho'oponopono is usually led by what they call a kahu, who is the priest, who's usually leading this. And it allows people the opportunity to state, this is what I think the problem is. There is honesty and ownership. You own what's their problem, what's my problem. These are my feelings. So you're not allowed in Ho'oponopono to say, well, when you stole that canoe, you really hurt his feelings. No. We only can be honestly speaking about our own feelings in Ho'oponopono. It's very, very honest, very much about ownership. That's number 2, kuluku mohana, which actually means stating a problem. Number 3 is mahiki, discuss the problem with everyone, and this is led by the kahu. This is when people get to go around the room. This is the traditional Ho'oponopono process. And they get to say how whatever this person did hurt them, or how it impacted them. Like I would say to Ed, when Julie stole my canoe, Julie, when you stole my canoe, it really hurt me because my grandfather made that canoe, and I was really hurt. And then Wally would say, yeah, Julie, when you stole the canoe, we couldn't go out fishing, and so we didn't have enough fish in that week, And different people would go around the room, and Julie would get a chance to hear how what she had done had impacted the community. I know you didn't really steal the canoe. You don't mind, do you? Okay, fine. I know her. She's okay. She can't even swim. So part of this really wasn't her. So the whole point is that people get to express how that action impacted the community, because a lot of times we do things in this world, we have no idea how it actually impacts other people. So Ho'oponopono is a complete, open, honest, somewhat confrontive, but not in a negative way, just an honest way of what happened. That's what it is. You say the likes, the dislikes, and then there's a suggestion to improve. Like, life would get better if Julie would bring my canoe back. And if you broke it, then you'd have to fix it and bring it back. Then you go, that's mahiki. Number 4 is ha'ina, which is confession. Now, ha'ina is also a word that if you listen very carefully, you'll hear it in the last verse of almost every Hawaiian song ever written. You'll hear it in the next song that they're going to sing. Ha'ina ia mai kapuana. So ha'ina means it's a declaration. It's a statement. And the ha'ina is where finally, after all, everybody has shared, whoever is the perpetrator would have the opportunity to stand and to say, this is what I've done and I'm sorry. And you say, well, why would they want to do that? Well, the reason to do that is because creating community and healing the fracture that we have when broken relationships is more important than being right. And that is an incredible decision that we all have to make, that it's way more important to be in relationship than to be right. Now, we can still be right in the sense of, I don't think that was right, but I am not going to let it get in the way of being in relationship with you. And in the Hawaiian community, that sense of oneness and that sense of being in relationship was more powerful. So why would anyone ever stand up and say, I confess to you that I've done this wrongness, because they don't want to be separated anymore. And it's not worth it. It is not worth the pain. It's not worth the fractured heart that happens. Honesty, ownership, no blame. Kalana actually means forgiveness, but it means something else too. It means, this is the 5th step, it means not only forgiveness, but it means letting it go. We've all had meetings with people, and we vent ourselves, and then we walk away and we're still mad. And we can't wait to tell you about how awful that was. In this step, it's not only about forgiveness, but it's about it's done. In Ho'oponopono, when it's finished in that session, it is finished. It is complete and whole. The energy is done and released and healed in that moment. And so everyone goes from that place reconciled. Everyone goes from that experience whole again. Everyone goes from that place knowing that they are one once again. It's powerful. It's incredibly beautiful. This is from the Gospel of Mark. At one point, Peter got up the nerve to ask, Master, how many times do I forgive a brother or sister who hurts me? 7? Jesus said, 7? Hardly. Try 70 times 7. This is from the translation called The Message, and I like it because Jesus talks really clearly to me in that Bible. Hardly 70 times 7. So this concept of forgiveness is a never-ending one, and it is a choice. It is the choice that brings peace. I've been counseling with people this whole week, and people, I get it, but we tend to get upset at some of the silliest little things in the world. Do you know that, or is it just people I know? I know some people, and they came and they put this letter on my porch. I can't believe they just did that. And now look, this letter says, and it's going on, and I'm saying, you know what? This is no big deal. And they look at me like I'm speaking Greek, and I'm saying, you have a choice. You can be really, really distraught that that's the way the letter was delivered, or you can just say, that's interesting. Pick it up and deal with the issue. We always have the choice. That is our power. And my exhortation to you, that's what preachers do, is we exhort, is to be at peace and choose a path of peace, which means forgiveness. There's many people in our congregation in 12-step, and one of the great Bibles of that is called the 12 and 12, and it says there, in all these situations, we need a willingness to admit when the fault is ours, and an equal willingness to forgive when the fault is elsewhere, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness. It is by forgiving that one is forgiven. The last stage is panina. And it's there's usually a closing prayer called pule ho'opau, which is the finished closing prayer. But it's not just about finishing up with a prayer and acknowledging God. In this prayer, there's people get to finally say, okay, this process was great for me. I feel complete. I feel whole. But then the second thing is it's a chance to reaffirm aloha, to reaffirm love, to rebuild, to begin to weave together the brokenness. Now that's kind of the extent of the big process of Ho'oponopono. So you see it as a big deal, and it has to be led by a person who's very skilled at that, the kahus who know how to do Ho'oponopono. So I do encourage you, if you're in a situation at work or in family where that might be necessary, it's a great thing. But for all of you that are here today, I want you to think about how you can do this in our daily life. How can we walk around and practice this Ho'oponopono without trying to call in a cast of thousands, other than the cast that's up here? Well, let's look at the first three things that are in Ho'oponopono. Meditation, then there's an awareness of the issue, and then there's a willingness to discuss. We can do that at any moment in time. Any one of us can do that at any moment in time. When we're confronted with any kind of an issue of conflict or anything that's disturbing, we can right away say, I got to go into meditation about this. And then we find some awareness, and then we'd be willing to discuss. There's a woman named Paula Krupp Sue Krupp, who wrote an amazing story. It talks about this process, but in that story, she makes a very important point, and this is what we need to get, is that the energy that any one of us holds in our life, in our minds, any kind of energy we hold, that energy goes before us. So don't think for a moment that my attitude is just my attitude, because it is an energy that moves forward. And in this story, she as a mother was having an argument with her young teenage daughter, which seems to be a very natural thing that mothers and teenage daughters do a lot. And it got kind of, out of control. And there were some heated words. And she decided to stop. She went into a different room. And she began to meditate. And she began to think about this confrontation she'd had and tried to understand where the daughter was seeking some awareness. And in that awareness, she kind of got, a little inkling of where her daughter might come from. She got a little inkling of how maybe she was a little too naggy, or she just started getting these things. But you see, the energy was different. It's not an energy of confrontation. She went into that place because she wanted to connect with her daughter. So there's a desire and an energy for the oneness. And that's what happened. Then she decided after this meditation, and she got some awareness, that she would be willing to talk to her daughter. She just did these first three steps. But what happened was, before she could get up off the couch, the door opened, her daughter came in and apologized. They sat down on the couch and cuddled, watched TV, and then when they were finished, they had a calm intelligent discussion about what had gone on. The reason that happened, I believe, is because the energy that she was holding, the energy that she was creating from the meditation and the awareness is an energy that went beyond that couch and that door and that room and into that place where her daughter was, and it created a doorway of reconciliation. It's beautiful. The last three are, each one of us needs to take responsibility for our own feelings and actions, make the choices. We need to practice forgiveness of ourselves and others, and we need to decide and choose love always. I have kind of a standard philosophy around here, and you'll hear people say it and quote me all the time. Very simple. Love rules. When we're faced with a decision, love rules. That's a choice I invite you to make. I invite you to embrace this idea of you being the walking point of reconciliation for the world by practicing love, forgiveness, letting love rule in your life. Because that is how we create heaven on earth. I'm going to invite you to close your eyes with me for just a moment. Take a deep breath. This is a time in a service when I'm going to actually invite you to do that meditation. And into that meditation, I want you, if you can, to take a heart of willingness. To take a heart of openness. To take a heart that says, I choose to create holy relationships. I choose to create holy relationships. Can you say that with me? Let's say it quietly together. I choose to create holy relationships. And if that is your choice, then I want you to understand that you need also to commit in this sacred time to forgiveness. Commit to forgive yourself. Commit to forgive others. So maybe for you, the words might be, I commit to a practice of forgiveness. Can you join me and say that? I commit to a practice of forgiveness. Together, I commit to a practice of forgiveness. And then finally, in this meditation, in whatever situation may come up in your life or your heart, I want you to hold these two simple words. Love rules. Can you say that together with me? Love rules. Let's say it again. Love rules. In this quiet time that we have with God right now, let those words echo in your mind and heart as we come to God in the sacred and holy silence.